Hello and welcome to the World Builders Library. Over the years, we've done a whole whack of world building by biome. Everything is important. Monster types, governments, temperate zones. You know, the big blocks of world building. However, the fullest of our shelves, by far, are the essential volumes and exercises concerning forests, islands, mountains, swamps, plains, yada yada, la da dee da. And yet, there's still a big one missing. I'm Lewis Nichols, and today we're talking about coastlines. Kind of self explanatory, but let's just make sure we're all on the same page. A coastline biome is the zone where the land and the sea, or a big ass lake, have a heavy influence on one another. It's an area big enough to support its own ecosystem. While shaped by the inland and the deep water, it is, nonetheless, unique. I think that the strongest opening statement about coastline settlements concerns diversity. It's likely your world's biggest cities will be on the coast and all sorts of folks are going to live there. You have the bounty of the sea, both in trade and food, and all the advantage of resource caches on the land. However, not just any spot's going to do. Some of the most miserable, desolate places on Earth are also coastlines. Temperate zones make a big difference, as does proximity to trade routes and the convenience of inland infrastructure. Big check marks further include the existence of a potential port, as in a bay or harbor. Many cities are not actually on the exposed coast, but up a wide river or nestled in some other protected area. Looking at you, London, San Francisco, and Oakland. The potential for a deep water port is yet another big deal, so the big boats can get in close. The more of these elements that exist, the greater a city's potential, both in size and wealth. Coastal cities are more likely to be a mix of Valido, ethnic groups, and even stranger beings, depending upon where you want to take the world building. There are many examples of coastal megacities in fantasy, from Baldur's Gate to Waterdeep. These large cities usually trade across the seas, drawing visitors and residents from across the world. A natural step for cities like these is the development of astral trade routes and investments in becoming a hub for teleport circles. Combine all this and it is possible to create a high fantasy city with a population in the millions. Coastal cities in the tropics do exist, but are problematic. Disease and storms are both big problems. If they do exist, they're going to need another reason. The metropolis of Singapore came and went for centuries before really catching hold, despite the fact of being on one of the world's largest oceanic trade routes. As successful as it is now, there were big stretches of time when it was unoccupied swamp, despite being in the perfect location to take advantage of that trade. Northern Australia is near those same trade routes, but almost no one lives there. There's only one city on the long coast that might be considered significant. Instead, everyone lives farther south where the weather is more agreeable. Smaller cities and simple towns are pretty nice too, and much easier to manage. A coastal town might be built near a resource as some global sea power starts to explore new lands. It's the best of both worlds for store development. Lots of exploration, but a steady supply of amenities from the mainland. There are thousands of coastal towns scattered throughout temperate zones. Everyone is different, but there is one big thing that they have in common, that connection to the sea. It's the center of their economies, with fishing to lead the way. If your world is mid to high dev, you're probably looking at tourism as well. The more protected the docks, the better. Coral reefs, barrier islands, coves, there are tons of ways this protection could come about, but without it, the settlement will suffer regular torment from big waves powered by dangerous storms. Plan your storms. If you decide hurricanes are a thing in your development area, plan them. Even a hurricane-prone area might not see big weather for years at a time. Maybe once a decade, or even less. Smaller storms might be every year or two, maybe even more than one in a year. But these are really just big thunderstorms with extremely localized damage. And remember, just because you're on the coast, your planned disaster doesn't have to be a hurricane either. Coasts are susceptible to many of the same dangers as anywhere else. Earthquakes, droughts, meteors, the Terraskew, you know, perfectly natural disasters. Well, we didn't really say we had a part one, but we're going to call this part two. You might have noticed that not all coasts are occupied by settlements at all, and if they are, they might not be the dominant world-building feature of this biome. Unmolested coasts might be the home of seafaring birds who nest on the land but hunt the seas. This biome might also be the mating and/or breeding ground for otherwise seagoing animals. We see this with turtles and seals, penguins for that matter. Referring back to our definitions, it's pretty easy to see the cross-influence. Seals will attract predators, both from the land and the sea. Imagine being a seal caught between killer whales in the water and cave bears on the land. Not very pleasant at all. Now imagine the seal carries a sword. Ha ha, smart seal. I have to say, not all beaches are pleasant. We're used to the sight of highly manicured spaces where sand is brought in or rock to prevent erosion. Natural coast is a lot messier than that. Seagrasses, poisonous aquatic life, lots of places for saltwater crocodiles and snakes to hide. If your character doesn't even know what killed them, does the player have a right to know? Your wizard saw it. Ah, you stepped on a sea urchin, then got bit by a croc. Stumbled back and the cave bear got you. Don't worry though, the seal used the distraction to get in a few swipes with his vorpal blade and got away. Beaches are often windy. 20 feet offshore? Nothing. 20 feet inland? Nothing. Trying to light a grill on the sand? 60 mile an hour straight line winds with an attitude. Some coasts are prone to fog produced by temperature differences, and showers can come on suddenly, lasting only for a few minutes and always at the wrong time. And don't think waves are consistent. I was out wave jumping on Galveston Beach one day about 15 years ago. 4-foot wave, jump. 4-foot wave, jump. 4-foot wave, jump. 15-foot wave. My hands went to my face to save the spectacles, and the nature rolled a slam attack against my ass for 3d8 damage. So how does a coastal biome affect your game? Ease of food, usually. Anyone with a survival skill and the right equipment should be fine for fishing. Definitely an increased chance in disease. In the tropics, a realistic game could be miserable until the party can deal with the nuisance of illness and insect bites. You'd be justified in the occasional save to avoid a level of exhaustion. Again, it depends upon where you're at, but most coasts will have an increased chance of significant weather. Finally, you're drawing on elements of both inland biomes and the sea. Amphibious octopi, seagoing bears, your imagination is the limit. What about combat? If you're on the beach, you can mix things up by giving the sea an initiative. Every wave brings with it a chance to push one of the combatants around, maybe even knocking them prone. Adventuring in general. The sea might be bountiful for any number of reasons. It might hold shipwrecks far below the surface, or partially submerged. It might mean that opportunities hundreds of miles away are only a quick bit of ocean travel away. Either way, as a DM, find ways to push the unique elements of the environment. Allow feats, skills, and abilities to interact like they were made for the setting. Alternatively, if the party is new to the coast, maybe things don't work as they should. Fish out of water stories are entertaining for a reason. Just don't torment the players too harshly. They are a sensitive lot. Just a stray thought, in case it hadn't crossed your mind. Coasts can be abrupt with thin beaches. In other words, not every beach is a coastal biome. Sometimes it's just where the water meets the land, like a forest bumping up against a swamp. What's left? I don't know if you've noticed, but you're playing a game that involves a little bit of magic and fantasy. Civilizations don't just happen on the land in our worlds. There might be vast networks of water-based species and monster types. There might just be a threat-level midnight monster. In a low-dev setting, a family of water-dwelling dragons might decide they want a coastline, left alone by those noisy and nosy Velito. They will get their way or become the BBEGs trying. I have a 1,000-mile coastline personally. It's a perfectly good coastline, but it's held in limbo by a kingdom of aboleth. What undersea menaces have you cooked into your world? A magical world might mean waterspouts and tsunamis that look more like the movies than real life, underwater volcanoes that won't sit still, and waters thick with ghost ships armed with lightning cannons and bone blasters. Are boats even going to be limited by the water? They can go airborne or submerge. Hey DM, how much for a submarine? Alright, well, that should be the end of the video. We're at 1,500 words. That's about 15 minutes, and I have covered the basics. However, I haven't even opened the development document yet, and we said we were going to do that more often. So, let's get things cracking, see how many points we might have left out. These are in no particular order, with no method whatsoever to my madness. First thing, I should have thought about this one before. Don't forget your sea god. This is going to be one of the most important gods of your local pantheon. You might have overlapping gods, all related to the sea. This also means that you're going to want to establish a few good options for warlock patrons. While you're at it, check the new, old, and custom subclasses. If you are going heavy coastal and want to encourage the party to stay, give perks to builds that fit. Maybe the Fury of the Coast Barbarian does bonus damage while pinning an opponent underwater. Or the Warlock with King Squid Patron gets a free water breathing spell at will. Second thing, customize some sea-oriented magic. Maybe a sea salt sword. It's +1, but +2 for a week after being dipped in the ocean. Rings of water walking, potions of water breathing, boots of swimming. All of these items are certainly more likely to be found around the coast than in a desert. Am I right? Point number 3. We mentioned it, but make sure that you think about what's out to sea. Is there an underwater civ? If so, knock out a couple of thousand words so you have something to expand on when the time eventually comes. Now, standard word of warning. Do not postpone the start of your game because you have work like this left to do. Is 2,000 words too much? Write 200 and get to the fun stuff. Session 0 and a firm start date for Session 1. Point number 4. Either at sea or on land, if you're working with any level of civilization, put in some words on the economy. Do the locals harvest salt? Is it a big part of their economy? How hard is it for the party to own their own boat? Is there licensing and fees? Number 6, how much do your underwater and land-based species interact? Now, once again, this assumes that you have both, or either for that matter. Point number 6, how much do your underwater and land-based species interact? Now, once again, this assumes that you have both, or either for that matter. And it's going to be more complicated than something like the interactions between dwarven kingdoms and man. But maybe, just maybe, the conditions still exist for large expat communities in both areas. Number 7. Let's end with some holidays. We've done videos on this, so I know that you should definitely know your top 5 celebrations during the year. In a coastal region, it might be days looking back on the worst storms. It might be the day the first ship of settlers came to shore. Is it the sea god's high holy day? Maybe the god of storms. And dropping back to number 5. If you're dealing with a mid-development or stronger navy, is gunpowder a thing? Do they have cannons? It doesn't have to be a thing. It doesn't even have to be a thing waiting to be discovered. Maybe it's just not possible. Or maybe it is, and you can have a blast. Alright, long video equals short outro. Take care of yourselves out there. We'll be back into economics next week. Probably. Cheers, everybody.